Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Kenny, head of community, and welcome back to Everything Cannabis. Now, for today's video, today's topic of discussion, we're going to be talking about the misconceptions of cannabis. But before I get started into that, I want to give you guys some context, as usual, as to why we started Everything Cannabis. I want to give you guys a little bit of the intent and the purpose of this channel. Now, if you don't know already, currently I am an entrepreneur in the medical cannabis space in Australia, but I am located in Vancouver, Canada, in North America, where cannabis is legalized and is being consumed recreationally. So working in the medical cannabis space, I've been able to see both sides of the industry. And what I'm noticing in the recreational market is that a lot of people who consume cannabis, like myself, existing users, we have very little knowledge or understand why and how cannabis is actually helping us medically. And that's the gap we want to bridge here with Everything Cannabis. There's the medical side and there's the recreational side. And in order to bridge that gap and make the market become one where it doesn't matter if you are a recreational user or a medicinal user, you fully understand the benefits of cannabis and how it's helping you. Because if we can properly educate not only the users, but if we can educate the industry, if we can educate healthcare professionals, and we can have normal conversations around cannabis and not villainize the plants, that's where success comes from. That's where the growth of the industry comes from. And that's how individuals, businesses, companies, healthcare professionals, that's how everyone will benefit and grow, because we are having the right conversations and we're being educated properly. So on Everything Cannabis, that's really our purpose, to educate our audience on cannabis from recreational to medical. Now, before I get started, I just want to put a disclaimer out, just like how I will every single video. Remember that everything we share here on this channel is for educational purposes only. I repeat, everything shared on Everything Cannabis is for educational purposes only. If you do plan on consuming cannabis as a form of medical treatment and you don't live in North America where it's recreational, it's legal, but you live in a market like Germany or Australia where you have to speak to a doctor, that's what we advise you to do. Go speak to your local general practitioner, go speak to your local doctor for more information, and if they do have experience within the cannabis space, they will guide you in the right direction. And if they don't, well, send them our way. Send them to our content so that we can properly educate them. But with that being said, that's the disclaimer there. Okay, we want to make sure that you don't rely on Everything Cannabis as the only source of information. Please go out there, do your own research, talk to the right people before you make any decision when it comes to the consumption of cannabis, specifically for medical treatments. With that being said, let's get into today's topic, today's conversation about the misconceptions of cannabis. All right, so now that we've got the introduction of this video out of the way, let's get started into the misconceptions of cannabis. To start off, I'm only going to list out 3 common misconceptions that I have heard. I know that there are many more out there, and many of them, to be honest, it's based on opinion. So until we discover the actual facts, the actual data, which will come from the doctors and the researchers and the experts we're going to speak to, for now, just understand that what I'm sharing and what I'm talking to you guys about is based on opinion and based on information that we have found online, all right? So to start off, the very first misconception, these are just common phrases and common responses I would get from my peers and even from myself. And I want to ask you guys, as I go through these 3 misconceptions, ask yourself, is this something you have heard? Is this something that you have said yourself? And if there are any other misconceptions you've heard in the past or continue to hear when it comes to cannabis, please put them down in the comments below, share them with us, and we would love to have a conversation about it. So the very first misconception here, I think this is a very common one because it really comes down to the person's frame of reference or past experience when it comes to cannabis, is the following phrase. You know, the last time I consumed cannabis, I didn't like how I felt. It made me feel lazy. It made me feel sluggish. I felt like a couch potato. And all I wanted to do was eat food. And I'm not a big fan of that. So in terms of cannabis, I'm going to pass. Have you ever heard this? Have you ever said this to yourself? Because I know I have. And if you were the one that have said it to yourself like me, I have a follow-up question for you. Number one, what's your intent when it comes to the consumption of cannabis? Because this is an important point to consider before you choose to consume cannabis in the first place. From personal experience, I would say that in the beginning, yes, this was true for me. I did nothing but eat. I abused cannabis. I used cannabis as a way to escape from my problems. I used cannabis as a way to enjoy my food. And 4 years ago, guys, I was overweight for my size. Every weekend, this is what I would look forward to. I would work throughout the week. I would operate my business. And every weekend, I would look forward to smoking up and eat. In terms of smoking up, if you're from Australia, from Germany, places where recreational smoking is illegal, I'll just say vaping up and eating. Obviously, you can see me on the camera. Times have changed. I ended up turning my life around, my health around, in fact, by learning how to control the desire to eat after consuming cannabis. Now, where does this start from, right? So the question I asked myself to help me regain control of my behaviors and my actions when it comes to the consumption of cannabis, and I think this is important for you to ask yourself as well, are the following questions. Why am I consuming cannabis in the first place? Is it to eat? Is it to escape from my problems? Is it to help me feel better? Is it to help me relieve pain? What's your reason for consuming cannabis? Because if you have your reason, you can then figure out what your intent is. Because intention matters. Intention dictates how we perceive cannabis. Intention dictates our misconceptions and stigma around cannabis. Because if your intention is to just get high, if your intention is to just feel the psychoactive effect where all you want to do is binge eat, all you want to do is sit there, consume television and do nothing at all, cool. By all means, go ahead and do that. But all I can say is this, and I know there will be doctors, researchers, and anyone who's in the space, they can vouch for this as well. Just know that by repeating this process over and over and over again and having that intent in mind, you are going to follow that up with poor decisions, and it's going to lead to bad habits. You know, I've been there. This is exactly why I'm so open with sharing this story with you guys, because when you go down that path, you will always have a negative experience and a negative perception towards cannabis. For example, if I go back and look at my life, anytime I have someone that asks me if I want to consume cannabis, the mentality of it all is, yes, I get to relax, I get to do nothing, I get to enjoy my food, I get to eat, and that's it. That was the intent of cannabis. I didn't have the intent of consuming cannabis as a way to heal, as a way to get better, because all I ever knew with cannabis was my last experience with it and a frame of reference of eating food and doing nothing. Which leads us to the next misconception. Can cannabis be addicting? From a recreational perspective, I personally believe 100% it can be addictive, especially for individuals who consume cannabis because they simply enjoy it. However, from a medical perspective, this is a question I'd love to learn more about by speaking to a few of the cannabis prescribing doctors that we have in our network, and even inviting experts on so that they can share what their findings are in regards to addiction of cannabis. I do believe that recreational users can be over abusing the consumption of this plant and completely miss out on the optimal medicinal benefits, myself included. I would love to cut back on my consumption of cannabis. I would love to learn more as to how it's actually helping me. I believe it's helped me, but if I don't seek out the right information, if I don't speak to the right people, if I don't do the appropriate research, I will never know. And I will always be consuming more than I need to. So what I want to do next is I want to pull up an article for you guys. This comes from a cannabis educational resource website called Cannigma. We are very familiar with the founder of Cannigma, and they put out really good content. So as I mentioned earlier, I will make sure to add this into the description for you guys so that you could consume it for yourself. Awesome. So here it is. Is marijuana addictive? Is cannabis addictive? When it comes to cannabis, there's a lot of contradictory information out there on whether the plants can be addictive or not. On one extreme, there's the reefer madness hysteria that claims cannabis is a dangerous and destructive drug. On the other side, there are people that claim cannabis is a perfect medicine that is impossible to get addicted to. Right away from this very first paragraph, you could see how polarizing it is when it comes to the addiction of cannabis. You have one side who doesn't believe it to be, you have the other side who do believe it to be. And as mentioned earlier in this video, it all comes down to intent. It all comes down to the individual who is consuming cannabis. What is their current state of mind? What are their current problems, health problems in their life, and why are they consuming cannabis in the first place? If they already have a pre-existing addiction, if they already have behaviors that can lead to addiction, then of course consuming cannabis will lead them down that path. But if you have someone who doesn't have an addictive personality and they have the right intent going into the consumption of cannabis, it's very unlikely that they will be addicted. Getting back into it here, but the truth is that cannabis can be addictive for some and not at all to others. The majority of people that use cannabis, either recreationally or medicinally, will not become addicted. However, it is absolutely possible for a person to become addicted to using cannabis. Does cannabis addiction exist? Scientific research indicates that yes, cannabis can be addictive. About 1 in 10 people that use cannabis will develop an addiction, according to a 2018 study conducted by Columbia University and the New York State Psychiatric Institute. Cannabis users may develop a physical, psychological, and/or social dependence. Physical symptoms of dependence can include discomfort such as weight loss, headaches, mood swings, and/or abdominal pain when a user stops consuming cannabis regularly. Psychological symptoms may present irritability, anxiety, insomnia, etc. A social dependence means a user finds difficulty refraining from using cannabis in social settings, unable to abstain if others are partaking around them, and only socializing in contexts that are conducive to their cannabis consumption. All right. So, as you can see there from that article, and there are many more articles out there available to you, there are differences in opinions when it comes to the addiction. The only way to find out is through actual data, facts, and research, and I hope down the road we can dig deeper into understanding that so that you guys can better understand whether or not cannabis can be addictive. But I will mention again, I believe it all comes down to intention. I believe it all comes down to the individual and what they want to do when it comes to cannabis. If they are abusing cannabis as a way to do nothing at all, just to be a couch potato, be lazy, be non-productive, and just eat food, then of course it could lead to addictive behaviors, because what you're actually addicted to is the result of what happens after you consume cannabis. Okay? So now that we've covered cannabis addiction, I just want to get into the final misconception for today's video is number 3. Cannabis is a gateway drug to harder narcotics. First off, I am definitely going to require the knowledge and experience of researchers and doctors for this one in the near future. But in the meantime, I'll just share with you my own personal observation and my own personal experience. As someone who has consumed cannabis for 10 plus years now, and over the last decade, I can tell you there was no indicators or no gateway that has led me to the consumption or use of narcotic drugs. I do not have any type of urge to consider or even try hard narcotics. Going back to the very first one, it comes down to intent. Because I feel like if you already have an addictive personality, if you already have bad habits and you're using cannabis as a way to escape your problems, definitely is a gateway. And ultimately, when it comes to misconceptions about cannabis, the solution is always going to be the same. It's going to require education. All of these misconceptions, the three that I listed, it all comes down to education. If we can communicate and educate on the current facts, the data, and the research, we are on the path to releasing the stigma and past beliefs about this plant. We are on the path of helping people truly understand cannabis without living and believing in misconceptions. Now, with that said, this is actually going to be the end of today's video on the misconceptions of cannabis. Like I said, there are plenty more misconceptions we could have gone through, but I think it's important for you guys to go out there and research it yourself. And if there's anything in here that I did not mention of the three, please put them down in the comments, because I would love to have a conversation about them. I would love to ask questions to doctors and experts who can then answer that for us. So I hope you guys resonated with the content shared in this video. And if you did, please put them in the comments below. What did you learn? What are you learning about cannabis? And what else would you like to learn? Because if you're like me, a curious individual, a student of the game of life, I just want to know more. Cannabis has helped me. I believe it has helped me. Now I really want to understand why and how. And as always, if you do like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so that you are notified every time a video gets uploaded. Other than that, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for spending the time to hear me ramble on about cannabis. This is going to be fun. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.